Hi everyone, today I'm going to tie for you a straggle chironomid. So it's made out of a micro straggle string of 2.0 mil. It's kind of a chenille, and the concept from it comes from a fellow named Sandy Dixon, who actually ties chironomids with hot spots on them. And I certainly like that, and I've fished them in the past, and they work extremely well as an attractor or as a pattern that'll stand out from the rest of the chironomids in the crowd. So utilizing fluorescent colors and or natural colors, we create kind of a triggering hotspot for the fish to quickly key in on of the thousands of other chironomids that may be in the area. So basically, the way we tie this pattern, it's done with the abdomen section, just a simple 120 denier thread. So I'll just mount up another hook here. So it's kind of a two-part fly. So I'm just using, pardon me, 100 denier. We'll just use a Danville 100 denier black thread, and we just make sure all the twists and turns are out of it. And we'll lay down the thread with the catch and start on the thorax. And as you know, as we wrapped, it put several turns into the abdomen or into the thread. So we'll just unwind it until it's back to a flat position. And you can tell where the flat position is when the bobbin stops its turning. And then we'll just run flat touching turns down the body to keep the profile and abdomen extremely narrow. Once we're near the back, we'll just twist the thread up into a rope. And I just do that by spinning the thread and the bobbin in a clockwise position, and then just with open turns progress up the body to the back of the thorax position. So now basically our abdomen is complete, and I just tie off with a few turns and then just a 2-knot web finish in the thorax section. So what I'm using for a hook here is just a standard J hook profile. It's a BL554, and it has a good profile for chironomids and many other aquatic insects. So as I mentioned, so our abdomen is done. Now I'll just start with an 18-aught nano silk, and I just will run a white thread here, one that doesn't change the undertone of any materials if it does poke through, and it also makes a small white head or even breathers if you like. I mean, a lot of people prefer to put breathers on their chironomids, and that certainly works, and certainly nothing wrong with that. I just choose not to, partially because I'm not convinced that it's always required, but it certainly doesn't hurt it either. So now I've just laid a kind of a gray tone goose bite or turkey bite on top, and I'll run a brown toned goose bite on the bottom, and I'll offer the goose bite to the side and pull it underneath. And now I'll just run touching turns towards the eye of the fly to clean that up and build a little bit of mass in the thorax section. So here now we simply just add in the micro straggle, and this in particular color is the sunburst. Now we run anything from fluorescent oranges to UV blacks, what's called a camel color, reds, dark reds, oranges, fluorescent oranges, including olives, my personal favorite color, which is a lichen olive. It's kind of a brown olive color. We'll use chartreuse, green olives, a new leaf green that's out. We're going to play with that this summer, and then a brown olive. So the purpose of hot spotting is to, as you know, if you read good books like Dave Whitlock's book on imitating and fishing natural fish foods, he describes how flies fall into 4 categories, which are suggestive, impressionistic, imitative, and exact imitative. Exact imitative and imitative are superb flies to use when a fisherman knows exactly how to present the food imitations at a specific or given depth. And so this is where the profile of these insects is kind of critical. And I kind of like to also look at the fluorescent ideology of what is the most visible light at a given depth, and we know that in deeper water, blue-green end of the spectrum usually is more visible than the red-yellow end of the spectrum. So if I tie a pattern with a greenish or even a chartreuse abdomen, or thorax I mean, I would use it deeper, and if I run yellow-red end of the spectrum, then I would run it in shallower water. Shallower meaning usually 6 feet or less. So what I've done here is I've just roped up the straggle string just into a nice tight core. Now you can turn that either clockwise or counterclockwise, and then I wrap it around the thorax section, and I'll just start stroking the fibers back with each turn that I take, and try not to let go. So what will happen as you build up this thorax, you'll see that this will eventually become kind of a pseudo wing bud, and we'll poke out the sides when I lay the goose by it, top and bottom. So the wing buds themselves, if we can call them that, will have some kind of slight movement to them, giving generally what's a static pattern a little bit of life. So I wet my fingers and I sort of split microstraggle on top by brushing it to the side, and then I'll pull the goose by it, the grayer goose by it, across the top as a shell. Second turn, and then the bottom one across the bottom of the thorax. We'll just make sure both of these are good and tight. We'll tighten down, take a few more turns, and then pull tight right behind the hook eye and lay a half hitch in at this point. And keeping tension on the thread. Now I can just tear the biot away. Which usually comes off good and clean. In this case it kind of did not, so we'll just clean that up with a pair of scissors. And then I'll just clean up this head area. I'll use the thread to pull any material back from the hook eye. See if we can lash that all in. And like I mentioned, on that particular hook, this is a size 10, and I tie these down to a size 14. Although you can use microstraggle on certainly smaller hooks with less turns. 14 for chironomids is about as small as I go with this particular pattern here. And as you can see, the material's laid back into the side and protrudes out the bottom as well. If you find that too long, we all own a pair of scissors, so we can certainly just trim that back accordingly as we see fit. And I'll often just trim it maybe half the length, so we only have maybe a 1 mil length of microstraggle sticking out. At times I'll leave them longer as well, because I will find that a little bit of movement in the thorax section seems to make a pretty significant difference some days. And just one side's cleaned up. We'll just do this other side. And once you're happy with what you have, relatively equal and even, as you can see, I'll just put a little bit of the no-tack UV resin, brush the straggle down, and then put some no-tack UV resin across the top of the fly only. So with microstraggle sticking out through the thorax section, it has a tendency to slow down or decrease the drop rate of the pattern, which for chironomid fishing is actually a very good idea, because chironomids do not move very quickly, so it's really a finesse game. And I make the assumption that any fish I fish for is a bit of a discerning fish and likes a good presentation as much as they like a good profile. So I never really fool myself into having to adjust accordingly to that. I just assume that the fish are pressured and are finicky all the time, even if they're not. So anyways, this is the Straggle Buzzer, and I hope you enjoy that, and hope you get an opportunity to fish with it. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.